traits do organisms in the Archaea, Protista, plant, and fungi kingdoms have that allow them to survive? So the title today is the non-animal kingdoms. We'll talk a lot more about the animal kingdom tomorrow, but today we're talking about everybody else. Today is May 6th, 2021, and it is the third day of our 10th unit. I want to remind you all as well, videos from any lessons that you may have missed are posted to YouTube. So if you want to go back and take a look, or if there's a specific topic that you'd like to get a refresher on as you do some of your own EOC preparation, it could be a good idea to go back and look at some of those earlier lessons. Okay, let's start off with the quizzes. This quizzes is going to cover photosynthesis and cell respiration. Classic. Okay, so you all can join the game. I'm sending a link to the chat now. Click on that link in the chat to join the game. I'll share this screen. You can also go to joinmyquiz.com. Send in the link one more time. Click on that link and it should take you to our quizzes about photosynthesis and respiration. I've got 10 people. I'm going to wait about 15 seconds to see if anybody else can get into the game. All right, let's go ahead and get started. That's not Monet, if you're still working, please go ahead and try to finish up. Most people are almost done. We're kind of waiting on you, Monet. New game, folks. New game. Please go ahead and join this new game. Thank you, Rudy. All right, folks, so let's go through the lesson and then there will be one more quizzes that we can play at the end, I think. So let's go through the lesson. So this is the table that I want you all to, do I want you to write this down? No, not really. So we're looking at these, the number of kingdoms has changed over the years. We kind of started off with 3 kingdoms, and as we have developed better techniques and as we've come to discover different types of life, we've come to understand the differences between some of these kingdoms. So they all have unique ways of surviving. They all have unique ways of thriving in specific environments. And we're going to talk about some of those adaptations today. As we're seeing here, there are 6 kingdoms, not including the animal kingdom, which we'll talk a lot more about tomorrow. 2 of these kingdoms are prokaryotic. What does it mean to be prokaryotic? Older. That's definitely one aspect of it. What else? Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Prokaryotic organisms don't have nuclei. What else do they not have? Excellent, Rudy. Thank you. They do not have membrane-bound organelles. So that includes nuclei, as Brian said, but it also includes a couple other organelles like mitochondria, chloroplasts, and vacuoles. So we do not see those present at all in prokaryotic organisms. These also tend to be unicellular, and they also tend to be what are called organotrophs. So this means that they basically just get their energy from chemical compounds like ammonia or alcohols or sugars, okay? We know that some of them can also be phototrophs, which means that they get their energy from sunlight. And if you look at the bottom of this table, we see fungi, plants, and protozoa, which we're probably a little more familiar with. These tend to be either phototrophic organisms or heterotrophic organisms, meaning that they're getting their energy from other living things, either by eating parts of them or by eating the whole thing, engulfing them. All right. So just as a quick review of these different kingdoms, the first one, Archaea. These are similar to bacteria in size and in shape, but interestingly enough, they're genetically much more similar to eukaryotic organisms. They use a lot of nutrition, a lot of different nutrition sources, that really should say, and they get energy from a lot of sources as well. So sunlight, inorganic compounds like ammonia and salt, and also organic compounds. These are compounds that have carbon in them, so alcohols and sugars. Archaea reproduce asexually. So this is a common theme that we see in a lot of these kingdoms besides the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. Most forms of life on our planet do reproduce asexually, interestingly enough. So obviously you don't need to write everything down on this slide, but if you can get some basic facts, I think that would be a great idea. Just kind of try to skim some of these notes. Archaea do reproduce asexually through a process called binary fission. Initially, when they were first discovered, they were discovered only in extreme environments. So kind of like this, you might find them in this is in Yellowstone National Park. I can't think of what it's called now. Wow. But you would find them in extremely hot environments and in extremely salty environments. And this is where they were first thought to survive. But now we have found them all over the planet, including on humans. We have found them in the human microbiome, so in the human gut, as well as on skin. So again, no need to write down everything here, but just try to grab some important information. I actually don't see anybody writing anymore, so might be good to go. Okay, then there's the bacteria kingdom. Interestingly enough, this is just kind of a fun fact. Almost all animal life on Earth depends directly on bacteria, because bacteria are basically the only known life source that can produce vitamin B12. And vitamin B12 is needed for, or in all of our cells for specific metabolic processes. So our cells rely on vitamin B12, and the only place that they can get it is from bacteria. So this is really, really interesting. And same thing goes for all animal life. So we're depending on bacteria to provide that for us. If we were to add up the weight of all bacteria that lives on planet Earth, it would weigh more than all the animals on Earth. It would weigh more than all the fungi on Earth. The only thing that weighs more than the bacteria are the plants. So if we add up all the plants on Earth, the biomass that results from that would be humongous, but there's still a lot of bacteria. And if you consider how small bacteria are, that really tells you how many bacteria there are. If we add all of their masses up, we would see that it would weigh more than all the animals combined. Of course, this is because we find bacteria everywhere. Bacteria can live in water, bacteria can live in soil, bacteria can live inside or on other living things. Bacteria are an absolutely vital part of various nutrient cycles. So the carbon and nitrogen cycles, we talked about those last week. We need these bacteria to break down carbon and return it to the soil, return it to plants. We need bacteria to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere so that it can be turned into nitrates, which can then, of course, be used by plants. So we need these bacteria for our various nutrient cycles. And bacteria are some of the oldest life forms. Some of their ancestors were the very first life forms on Earth and existed 4 billion years ago. We do have somewhat of a fossil record for some bacteria, but we relied mostly on DNA evidence to show just how old they are. And then, of course, bacteria also reproduce asexually, and they can reproduce rapidly. So bacterial colonies can actually double in size every 9.8 minutes, which is extremely fast. Okay. Here's a kingdom that you've probably never heard of before. It's called Chromista. This is kind of just like a catch-all kingdom, meaning that everything that is a protist, meaning it's a eukaryote that is not an animal, it's not a plant, and it's not a fungi or a fungus. We just kind of throw it into this kingdom. So we see a lot of diverse organisms. We see some forms of algae, some parasites, and then some blight, which are organisms that can cause diseases to fruits and vegetables. The name Chromista literally means colored, because they often have a lot of different pigments that give them this kind of brown or golden color. And they are directly useful to human beings because we can extract chemicals from them that allow us to produce paper, toothpaste, ice cream, and various other substances. So while you all may not have heard of them, they have directly benefited your lives. Chromista. Okay. All right, so fungi. So we'll talk a little bit more about them. Fungi are interesting because they can reproduce both asexually and sexually. They can reproduce asexually through what's called binary fission, and then also sexually through the dispersal of spores. So they kind of just release, kind of like plants release pollen. Fungi will release these spores, and if they come in contact with the spores of another fungus, then sexual reproduction can take place.
The evolutionist concept has been disseminated by different branches of human knowledge, just as mushroom spores are spread on a cool breeze. Each new season, countless spores are released into the autumn air by the mushroom kingdom. Over the period of a few days, each organism tries to reproduce to the best of its ability. The primitive strategy used by these beings consists of creating many countless possibilities for survival. Each of these reproductive cells will find its own fortune. The wind will blow them in similar directions, but no two will alight on the exact same spot. The unique genetic code written on the chromosomes of each cannot be repeated. They may be quite similar or nearly identical, but some will triumph, and others, the vast majority, will not. Some will be breathed in by an animal, others will fall into the water, and almost none of the rest of them will find an appropriate place to land, and therefore will not survive. But with luck, one of these spores, perhaps just fractionally rounder or more aerodynamic than the others, will be able to fly higher on the air turbulence created by insects, or will be more capable of holding up thanks to this year's lower humidity levels. And when it lands in the perfect place with the ideal adaptations, it will grow and prosper there where its siblings couldn't. At last, when it reaches the moment of reproduction, its own spores will incorporate those variations in its chromosomes that helped it find success. And its improved design will have a tendency to perpetuate itself in this environment. This is the essence of the changing life that Darwin understood and interpreted.
Not the most interesting thing, but... And then there's, of course, the plant kingdom. Typically, there are two types of plants, vascular plants and non-vascular plants. Non-vascular plants do not have vascular tissue, so they don't have any what we would consider veins, essentially. These do not also, they also do not have seeds, so they use spores to reproduce. They don't have roots, which means that they must be low to the ground in order to collect water. And they use osmosis and diffusion to absorb and excrete water and nutrients. So these would be your moss, your liverworts. Your mosses, I guess. Vascular plants, on the other hand, have what are called xylem and phloem. Did you want me to go back, Ardesia? Okay. Okay. Vascular plants, on the other hand, have what are called a xylem and a phloem, which they use to transport materials. So the xylem helps to carry things only upwards. It carries primarily water and minerals to the leaves of the plant and the fruits of the plant. Phloem kind of allows things to go both up and down, but mostly down. So as food is produced in the leaves are really the site where a lot of photosynthesis happens. As that food is produced, it needs to be carried back downwards towards the roots so that the roots can have some nutrients. And so it does so through the phloem. So plants are actually a lot more sophisticated than I think we give them credit for. They've got this vascular system of what are essentially veins, some of which go up, some of which go down. They also have not quite a nervous system, but they have a system of cells that allows them to communicate within themselves. So in order to kind of remember where the sunlight is, they have cells that can communicate that. And then these vascular plants mainly reproduce sexually. Okay. Of these vascular plants, there are angiosperms and gymnosperms. Angiosperms use seeds, or they have seeds that are protected by fruits and flowers.
While most people know that mistletoe is a great way to get a kiss at Christmas, few realize that it's actually a parasite. There are about 90 species of mistletoe in Australia alone, and they all send out roots that penetrate the bark of trees and siphon off water and nutrients. The question is, how did they get up to these aerial gardens in the first place? The mistletoe bird. It specializes in popping open the parasite's ripe berries and swallowing the sticky contents. Thanks to the bird's modified digestive system, it only takes half an hour for the mistletoe seed to pass undamaged from beak to bottom. And that's when the bird starts gardening. Simply by wiping its bottom, the mistletoe bird manages to plant the sticky Klingon in the perfect position to form a new aerial garden. The mistletoe's developing root quickly penetrates the branch of its host and starts siphoning off all the nutrients it needs.
Okay, so we've got these angiosperms, which have seeds, and they also have fruits, and then there are also gymnosperms, which produce these cones, and they rely on dispersal by the wind, essentially. So their seeds are durable so that they can survive this transportation through the environment. So angioseeds are kind of protected by the fruit. They get nutrients from the fruit, and the gymnosperm seeds are a lot tougher. So which one of them do you think would be better prepared to withstand a fire? Gymnosperms, good. All right, and then the last kingdom is the protozoan kingdom. Protozoa means the original animals. So these are really interesting because they're really small organisms, but they kind of behave like animals because they can move around quite well. And they also actually, in some cases, display predation. So they go after other organisms and eat them. They also lack cell walls. So even though they are unicellular organisms, they're kind of referred to as one-celled animals. Because they do eat other organisms, we consider them to be heterotrophic, but they reproduce asexually. So again, that's another difference between animals and protozoa. Animals reproduce sexually. Okay. All right. We just did that quiz actually. So why don't you guys go ahead and knock out the exit ticket? It's the Unit 10, Day 3 exit ticket. If you have not yet done the most missed questions from the Unit 9 exam, please make sure you do that assignment. That's a formal assignment. So that'll be 30 formal points. That has a big opportunity to help your grade, especially for those of you who have been struggling on the exams. You got me, Neftali? You heard that? Ferlin, you heard that? Did you hear what I said? Okay, so please make sure you do. Do you see this assignment in green right here? The one that's in green. It says MMQs from the Unit 9 exam. Please, please, please make sure that you do that. It's 30 formal points. Sade, did you hear that? Did you hear what I just said? Which one? Huh? Okay, so the one in green, do you see it on your screen right now? It says MMQs from the Unit 9 exam. It's 30 formal points. It's already on Canvas. It was from the day one, so Unit 10, day 1. So please make sure you do that. You've got 5 minutes you can dedicate to it right now. I think you can do your exit ticket and then work on this during hawk time. Folks at home, that applies for you too. Please, please, please don't forget about that assignment. It's a good one. It's a good points opportunity. We've got 5 minutes left, 5 minutes.